Greetings, fellow duelists, and welcome to Budget Builds, the show where I look at some of the cheapest, most free-to-play decks currently available on Master Duel. I'm your host, Hardleg Joe, if you didn't know, and what you just saw there a second ago was Megalith Stun, a ritual deck made entirely out of normal and rare cards, which, when piloted correctly, can destroy your opponent's entire field midway through their combo, and then follow that up by summoning a beat stick so powerful it makes Chaos Max look like a toothpick. This is one of the few truly budget decks available on Master Duel, buildable without a single Super or Ultra. And despite the fact that it's featured prominently in solo mode, most people still don't understand how this works. Including Konami, apparently? I mean, looking at the archetype, they only made one card a super rare, and it's arguably one of the worst cards in the archetype, a defense wall that negates targeting effects. Like, even if I wasn't on a budget, I'd maybe play one or two of these at the most. Anyway, I'll explain the deck in a minute. First, let's go over the list real quick, just for those of you who want to copy it and then duck out. For monsters, we're playing 5 incantations. We've got 3 Pensaplume, 1 Kandal, and 1 Talismandra, 3 Senju, and 3 Manju. And rounding out the monsters are just all the megaliths themselves. We've got 2 Haggith, and 3 each of Full, Ophiel, Phaleg, and Bethor. As for our spells, we're playing 1 Megalith Portal, 1 Incantation Inception, 3 MST, and 3 Megalith Unformed. Traps consist of 3 Compulsory Evacuation Device, 3 Lost Wind, and 1 Megalith Emergence. The extra deck does not matter. I mostly tested this without the extra deck, and you can honestly put whatever the hell you want in here. That being said, we play mostly level 4s and level 8s, so consider Ixie monsters in that range. Heartland Draco and Malevolent Sin are some budget rank 4 options that can occasionally steal games, and Draglubion is a low rarity rank 8 that can cheat dragon-type number monsters out of the extra deck, which gives you access to crazy shit like Heartland Draco and its Chaos counterpart, which are normally not worth summoning, but they might just do the trick in some specific situations. Oh, also, Crawl Sheep. Play this for sure. It's a generic rank 2, low rarity of course, which lets you draw 2 and discard 2 whenever you ritual summon, which can help you dig through your deck to find whatever specific tech cards you may need. But regardless, now that you know what we're playing, let's talk about how these cards actually work. A lot of duelists find Megalith to be confusing, but they're actually quite simple once you break them down. Let's jump over to EDO Pro and I'll show you how this thing works. Alright, so normally in order to ritual summon, you need 3 things in hand. A ritual monster that you want to summon, a ritual spell that lets you summon it, and any monster with levels that you contribute as cost. In most decks, these 3 things will be different cards. You'll have a monster, a spell, and a cost. The key feature of Megaliths is that they don't use ritual spells. Instead, they use their monster effects to accomplish the same thing. Every Megalith monster has an effect that lets you ritual summon, which, for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to call the ritual effect. For all the level 8 Megaliths, you activate their ritual effect by discarding them from the hand. So for instance, if you have a Leg, an Angel, and a Demon all in hand, you can activate the ritual effect of Leg by discarding it, and then ritual summon the level 4 by attributing the other level 4. It's as simple as that, really. Now all the level 4 Megaliths use their ritual effect on the field, and notably, since they're actually on the field, you can use them as cost as well. So if you have an Angel on the field and a Demon on the hand, you can activate the Angel's ritual effect and then tribute it as cost in order to summon the Demon. Again, pretty simple overall. All the level 4s work the same way, and all the level 8s work the same way, and that includes the Megaliths I'm not playing. The only outlier is our lone level 2 Megalith Fool. This thing is the best card in the deck. Its ritual effect can only be activated on the field, kind of like the level 4s, but you don't have to use it as cost, and more importantly, it lets you ritual summon a Megalith from the deck. Oh, and also it's a quick effect, so you can use that on your opponent's turn too. So if, for instance, you have a Fool on the field and a Leg in hand and any level 8 in the deck, you can ritual summon that monster out of the deck, just, get a Bethor, by tributing the card in your hand. And this effect is best utilized with Bethor because when it's summoned, you can target cards your opponent controls up to the number of rituals in the graveyard with different names, and destroy them. Usually this means popping 3 of your opponent's cards in the middle of their combo, which can be quite devastating indeed. Once you've broken the board with Beth, you usually want to follow it up by summoning Leg, who says, all monsters you control gain 300 attack and defense for every ritual monster in your graveyard, even if they have the same name. This doesn't sound like much, but it's not too difficult in this deck to have 4 or more rituals in the graveyard by turn 2, which means everything you have is boosted by 1200, which usually gives you more than enough to OTK, or at least come very, very close. And really, that's the core loop of the deck. Bethor breaks boards during your opponent's turn, Phaleg goes in for the kill on your turn, and Fool summons the 2 of them from the deck, usually cycling between them. All the other main deck players in here are just to facilitate that combo. Let's talk about them briefly. Angel searches a Megalith monster on summon. This is not a hard once per turn, which is why we played 3. You're usually going to resolve it more than once. Demon searches any Megalith spell trap on summon. This is also not once per turn, but the spell traps aren't as important, which is why we just play it at 2. The most important spell trap is Megalith Unformed, a quick play that lets you summon a Megalith from the deck by tributing double the levels required for its summon. This is a pretty hefty cost if you want to go for one of the level 8s, but since Fool is only level 2, you could simply tribute the demon that you just summoned and bam, you got yourself a Fool out of the deck. Because the 3 of these are so recursive, you can set up your loop with just 2 cards. Let me go ahead and show you that combo real quick. All you need is either Senju or Manju and any of your level 8 monsters. Alright, so what you're gonna do is normal summon your Mon or Sen, and then use its effect to search the Megalith Angel, the level 4 one. Then you're going to discard your level 8, whatever it is, activating its ritual effect in order to summon this by using the 4 convenient stars we just happen to have on the field. This will trigger the Angel's effect, allowing us to search the demon. Once we have both of these, then we can use the ritual effect of the Angel to summon the demon. And that will trigger its effect, allowing us to get any spell trap. But of course we're going to go for Megalith Unformed in this case, because like I just described a moment ago, you can use this and ritual summon Megalith Fool straight out of the deck by using this thing. Now, in addition to its ritual effect, when Fool is summoned, you can grab a ritual monster out of the graveyard, and Fool's level will become that level, which can be kind of useful for like Ixie plays and stuff if you really need it. Mostly though, we're going to grab back an Angel, and then just immediately use it as cost to summon another Angel, because the search effect is not once per turn. This will allow us to get a level 8, preferably one that we didn't discard at the first turn, and that sets us up for our opponent's turn. Now, as soon as we go over, once it's in, you can only use this in the main phase, but say they're doing a bunch of plays, we can now use this, discard or summon the Megalith from the deck by discarding the one in our hand, and because we have 4 Megaliths with different names, we'll now be able to pop 4 cards our opponent controls, and hopefully just absolutely devastate whatever board they were trying to build. Assuming that works, and they pass over to the next turn, then you can just use Megalith Full on the Bethor you have to summon a Leg from the deck. And as you can see, everything is quite swole. We've got big numbers everywhere, more than enough to finish our opponent off And you know, if you probably have other stuff in hand, if you did things, if they had something, you could probably deal with that too. So there's the main Megalith combo, and the great thing about it is not only how few cards it takes, but just how flexible that combo is. In case you didn't notice, we searched or summoned 4 cards out of the deck during that, and if you start with any of those, then you can just search or summon some extra extenders. If you have more rituals in hand, it's not too difficult to get a Cross Sheep on board, or maybe one of your rank 4s if you feel like it. We don't have any particularly good ones here in the budget version, but if you have some extra SR points, I'm sure you could find something. Alternatively, if you open with a Fool or an Unformed in hand, then you can use your Demon Search on one of the other Megalith spell traps, the best of which is easily Emergence. This is a continuous trap that says once per turn, you can summon a Megalith out of the graveyard, but if it leaves the field, place it on the bottom of the deck. This thing is not only a good backup if your plays get disrupted, letting you resurrect your Fool even if it gets kaiju'd or destroyed before you can activate it, but also, the second part of that effect allows you to infinitely loop Bethor. Like not all at once, but you can keep summoning it every turn and never run out of materials, since the revived copies with Emergence can be used as cost and will just be shuffled back in the deck. You could just cycle through them over and over again. Infinite destruction. It's pretty neat. Same thing can be done with the angels and the demons, by the way, allowing you to search your other spell traps if need be, such as Megalith Portal. This also allows you to recycle a bit. It says once per turn, when you summon a Megalith, you can add a ritual from the grave to your hand, which can be useful if things get really grindy, or if your board gets completely wiped and you need help rebuilding. It also gives your ritual monsters some battle protection, which is occasionally useful, but I think the trap is usually better most of the time. Anyway, that pretty much explains the main players of the deck. All that's left is Manju, Senju, the incantations, and our tech cards, which I guess I'll run over real quickly. I mean, these two should be obvious, right? They search a ritual monster on summon, and our combo is entirely ritual monsters. They're also level 4s, which make them perfect for cost, and also for making rank 4s. The incantations can also search your ritual monsters, as well as this ritual spell, which can be used to summon the Megaliths and get your plays started. I'm not really going to go over them in detail because the incantations are weird and complicated and hard to explain. And honestly, you probably don't need all of these. I only really included them because it was difficult finding budget stuff to round out the deck, so I focused on making the Megalith engine as consistent as humanly possible. Honestly, though, these are kind of redundant. You don't need them, but if you're looking for some stuff to round out your deck, you could do worse than the incantations. Speaking of rounding out the deck, let's talk about these tech cards real quick. I'm playing MST as my low rarity spell trap removal, because it's pretty much the only low rarity spell trap removal. Expect to see this in a lot of budget builds in the future. Along with that, we're playing Compulse and Lost Wind. The reasoning behind these is that Bethor destroys stuff, and that's pretty much our only removal. So if our opponent has monsters that can't be destroyed, we're going to be in some trouble. I figured with Compulse, we can send things back to the hand, or with Lost Wind, we can negate the effects that prevent them from being destroyed, and then destroy them. Now, of course, it is worth mentioning that both of these traps do target, as does Bethor. So if your opponent's playing monsters with targeting protection, you're gonna have a bad time. Although you can at least run over things by battle pretty good. Like Phaleg can easily get over 4,000, so even if they add Dragoon into the game, you should be able to just beat over it, assuming you can play through the one negation. But anyway, that's enough explaining, that's enough EDO Pro. I know why you're really here. You want some action, so let's jump back over to Master Duel, show you some replays so you can see what this deck can actually do. Now I should start this off by saying I recorded these duels in the Ixie Festival event, and not the standard competitive ladder. This means I don't have access to link monsters like Cross Sheep, which honestly aren't that important to the deck. I chose the Ixie Cup, by the way, because this deck is not good enough to face the kind of stuff you'll find in Platinum. Now, Megaliths as an archetype might be able to hold their own in Plat, but you would need some higher rarity cards to really push this over the edge of viability. If you're looking for some non-budget options, by the way, I will cover those after the replays. Just use the time codes to get there. Speaking of replays, this one is just doing the standard Megalith combo I showed earlier. You'll notice that it's taking significantly longer to do in Master Duel because the animation for ritual summoning is very long and you're going to be seeing it a lot. The first thing you want to do if you decide to play this deck yourself is turn off the summoning animations in the settings. Trust me, it'll save you a lot of time. I did that, but unfortunately they seem to show up in the replays no matter what you do. Regardless, we're going to be ending with everything we want. We got full-on field, a level 8 in hand, plus some traps, which immediately get feather dusted. I go ahead and chain Emergence to give us a little extra defense. Despite being a continuous trap, it does not work like Call of the Haunted. The monster gets summoned, and it doesn't really matter what happens to the trap. Anyway, losing those traps is not important because we're playing against vampires, which is a pretty interesting deck for the Ixie Festival, but not immune to having its entire board destroyed by Bethor. Which is what we're gonna do. Activate full, summon Big Beth out of the deck, and just pop all their monsters before they can even get around to Ixie summoning. This is going to force them to pass, and then before we even draw, they will surrender. Which, honestly, is how a lot of these duels go in a more casual setting. Megalith is one of those strange in-between decks that can't really stand up to the meta all that well, but absolutely dominates in a more casual setting, where decks aren't prepared to lose everything in a board wipe. Anyway, let's go on to duel number 2, which shows off what happens when your opponent doesn't immediately surrender to Bethor. And since our setup is almost exactly the same, I went ahead and just skipped to the end of our turn. We got a full-on field, level 8 in hand, plus Emergence and an MST, which is pretty good. Our opponent is on Phantom Knights this time, which is one of the most powerful decks in standard Master Duel format. But this is still the Ixie Festival, and without Cherubini and Rusty Bardish, its plays are severely limited. Case in point, blowing up these 3 Phantom Knights with Bethor is just gonna straight up end their turn. Just completely crush their little undead phantom souls. Like, they're gonna do a little searching, they're gonna set a couple cards, but the ability to extend into infinity just isn't there without the Link monsters. Regardless, once it switches over to our turn, we're gonna go ahead and summon Phaleg out of the deck using Full's effect, which just gives everything a big attack boost, like big numbers for everyone. And though they do have the Fog Blade to try to stop our beefy statues, we have the MST, which in this case does negate. From there, I figure, what the hell, it's the Ixie Festival. Let's go ahead and make some Ixies. Bring back Ophiel and go into everyone's favorite Duel Link staple, Gaga Samurai. You might have forgotten, but Leg's attack boosting effect applies to all monsters, not just rituals or megaliths, which means after we detach Sam, it's bigger than Blue Eyes with double the attacks. This would be game if not for the fact that our opponent has Fogblade in the graveyard, and Stained Greaves in hand, and a lesser-known PK trap on the field to protect their monster and prevent it from being banished. This not only ensures that they survive, but also that they'll have the material it takes to make a comeback next turn. I summon Bethor immediately, thinking they're going to try to pop full with the Break Sword, and I want to at least shuffle something back before they do that. But once again, my opponent decides that the problem card is not the dude that summons stuff out of the deck, but my continuous trap, which they use Break Sword to get rid of. This means that their monsters come back as level 4s, and I can just summon Bethor out of the deck, pop their last pathetic cards, and end this game once and for all! At least that's what I expected to happen. I mean, it turns out they got a doozy of a follow-up play waiting for me. They got a way to revive Break Sword and the rank-up magic, which allows them to make Ark Rebellion Ixie Dragon, which if you don't know, is a boss monster that gains all the attack and damn near cleans my clock despite how swole my dudes be. Fortunately, it's not quite an OTK, which means we got this in the bag. And I could just summon another Bethor here, pop everything, but I'm wary of giving them more floating trap cards. So instead, I decide to do something a little more tricksy. Search a level 8, just in case this fails. I do want to have a follow-up for next turn. But once again, this is the Ixie Festival, so let's summon some gosh darn Ixies. This time, I'm gonna go for Heartland Draco, which can detach to attack directly. And with its attack boost, this is well over lethal amounts of damage. Now, I could show you a third or even a fourth replay of this deck, but honestly, I'd just be doing the same things that you've already seen again. Despite how complicated Megaliths might seem at first glance, their playstyle really is pop things with Beth, make big number with leg. And if that doesn't work, make some rank 4s or some rank 8s or whatever. At least that's how the budget version of this deck works. If you want to include some SR or UR cards, then the scope of Megaliths widens considerably. For starters, there's this level 4 Megalith we don't play in the budget version because it doesn't really help you out with anything that you want to do. However, it has one fundamental difference compared to its other level 4 counterparts. Its ritual effect is a quick effect, and it can be used to summon any ritual monster, not just the Megaliths. Which means if you want to invest in some Shino birds, you can summon them during your opponent's turn as another form of removal. And if you don't know, these are non-targeting, non-destruction removal, which really helps cover some of the bases that Bethor misses. There's also Dark Magician of Chaos Max, which for some reason is not currently in Master Duel, even though it's been out in the TCG and the OCG for several years at this point. If they ever do add it, it is absolutely brutal when used with this thing, because it pretty much just skips your opponent's turn. Maybe that's why they left it out here. Megalith's too strong. Other than that, since Megaliths are rituals, they have synergy with most of the good ritual shit, like Ben 10 works in here, Diviner of the Heralds, sending Herald of Arclight to get searches, or if you have enough searches, you could send Entis, get some pops, helps you go in second. You could do the same thing using Extra Foolish Burial, which is slightly cheaper since it's just an SR, even though it does turn off your traps, but if you're not playing the traps, you can just play some quick plays or whatever, it's fine. There's also Preparations of Rites, a spell that searches half the archetype, and not pictured here, but certainly useful, Drytron. Once Herald gets hit, they can find something else to do besides their own gimmick. In addition to ritual stuff, the Megaliths are all also rocks, which means they have access to all the awesome rock support. Block Dragon, for one, being legal in Master Duel and at 3, is pretty much broken in this deck. Helps you maintain advantage and offers all your monsters destruction immunity while it's on the field. If you have this, 100% play it. It is broken. The only reason I didn't play it in this deck is because I did not want to explain Block Dragon combos. They are long and tedious, and I don't have time for that. You can also easily search Gallant Granite in this deck, which searches all your rock monsters, including Block Dragon. You can also tech in other archetypal rocks, like Adamancipator if you want to add some synchro plays. You can put in the Koki Mirus for added disruption. In addition to these synergistic options, there's also some tech cards that just work really well with this deck in general. Since we barely use our extra deck, Extravagance and Prosperity are both good options to play, and if you're going second, Dark Ruler No More is an excellent tech card for breaking boards. You can negate everything and then either pop it with Bethor or run over it with leg-boosted monsters. And there's a lot of ways for you to easily clear boards in this deck and then establish some disruption for the next turn. Finally, if you want to get really spicy with this, you can include some more incantations, specifically Chalice Slime. If you add these in lieu of the Manjus and Senjus, you can allow this deck to function without using any normal summons. which in turn allows you to make use of things like Danko Sekka, Thunder King Ryo, and even Barrier Statue of the Drought. You can set up your entire combo and then end it by normal summoning one of these and just locking your opponent out of some stuff, making them do extra stuff that again you can just disrupt with Bethor. There's a lot of different options with this deck, and honestly this budget version I've built is just scratching the surface. So you can try this out, since it's so cheap, you can build this for literally nothing, probably with the R points that you already have, and if you end up liking it, then you can just improve it with some more valuable cards over time. Keep adding things to it until you eventually turn it into a viable Platinum tier deck. It definitely has that potential. And on that note, I think I'm going to call it here. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you like this video and you want to see more like it. Check out my Patreon if you really like this video and want to support what I do. Maybe get onto my patrons-only Discord, very exclusive. And if you have any suggestions for future budget builds, leave them down in the comments. I do actually read those. For now, though, I'm out. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and until next time, good luck and have fun.